Hello, welcome back to another weekly wrap-up. First things first, it is a D&D day for my husband, so if you hear the background noise, that's what that is. I've read a few things this week. I actually originally thought I wasn't gonna do this video because my reading has been kind of slumpy since Oathbringer, but I have 4 things to talk about. That happened. And I visited one of my favorite bookstores in Los Angeles yesterday called The Last Bookstore. It's a used bookstore. They have used new books, and I love going there and trawling through all of the sci-fi fantasy section and getting a bunch of finding new sci-fi, but essentially new old sci-fi. I'm trying to dig a little further back into classic sci-fi and fantasy, but mostly sci-fi, so I grabbed a few things, which was kind of exciting. Also my Aardvark box and one other book that I bought, so let's get to it. First thing, book haul portion, my Aardvark box for October. My pick was The City in Glass by Nevo. I am so excited about this. Nevo is one of my favorite authors. Auto-read author for me, and this is shorter than I realized, but this cover is fantastic. And this month is celebrating Aardvark's 2nd birthday, so congrats to them. They included this really pretty holographic acrylic bookmark. She's a thickum, and so much sturdier than their paper bookmarks. Still don't know if I'll use it, essentially because it's so thick. It feels really awkward putting in a book, but you know, it's nice that I have something a little more permanent than the regular bookmarks where I feel like the ears are gonna rip off at the first chance. So it's holographic. You can kind of see all the colors. Let me try to get some of this light here. There we go. Yeah, it's really pretty. And then it says 2 years, fresh ears. So I've only been with them a couple of months, but I'm really happy with my Aardvark books. Here is the card. This is apparently bookshelf of every book that they've released over the last 2 years. And let's dig a little more into City in Glass. Pretty simple hardcover. The logo's down here. Like I said, I love how they incorporate their logo into the cover. And super simple hardback, but the color combo, mint chocolate chip goodness. And their hardcovers are pretty good quality. I like how they feel, and they're actually very floppy for a hardcover. Like the binding is good, but also they're floppy, which is really fun to read. So City in Glass was my October pick for Aardvark. Next, the rest of these are all sci-fi, and most of them, all but one essentially, are thanks to recommendations from Whitney over at the Secret Sauce of Storycraft. I'm linking her down below. Whitney has some really cool recommendation videos, like really cool recommendation ideas. If you're looking to expand your sci-fi reading, Whitney is a great resource because she does a mix of classic sci-fi, you know, more lesser known books, at least insofar as my exposure to sci-fi on the bookish internet, like watching people like Whitney and Thomas at SFF 180, I'll link him down below too, makes me realize just how much of a bubble I'm in when it comes to my own reading. So they've kind of both inspired me to be a little more deliberate in expanding my reading, especially my sci-fi reading. So one of the first things I picked up is Rubicon by J.S. Dews. This is a standalone military sci-fi about this soldier who keeps being resurrected, and I think after her 96th resurrection, she's just like, I can't do this anymore. And then she finds out something about the war that's going on, and it becomes a big machinations, you know, big far-reaching implications for the war as a whole. So it's a nice standalone military sci-fi, which I am kind of excited to read. I know J.S. Dews, first of all, J.S. Dews is a woman, which is cool. Women writing military sci-fi in my mind is pretty freaking cool. And J.S. Dews also wrote The Last Watch, I believe, series. Picture here if that's not totally correct, but I've been interested in that. Didn't realize J.S. Dews is a woman, so now I'm even more interested. So I'm going to read this if I like it. If I like her writing, definitely going to pick up that book series and check it out too. So Rubicon. Next is an author that I've been meaning to try out for a very long time. That is Kim Stanley Robinson. He writes pretty chunky, big thought sci-fi, and I have had my eyes on this pretty much ever since it came out. It's, you know, I've seen it on Goodreads, you know, almost every year since. You know, it's a very popular book, and I thought I was at the last bookstore going through all the authors, saw this as one of the only books that was there for Kim Stanley Robinson, so I figured why not. Next is an author that Whitney mentioned in one of her recent recommendations videos. Again, like I said, I am in a bubble when it comes to sci-fi. Never heard of this author. Another woman sci-fi author writing from like the 50s to the 80s and beyond, like decades of classic sci-fi she has been writing. This is Andre Norton. And I picked up, first is Stargard, and second is Spell of the Witch World. Now, when I go into the last bookstore, my cell signal disappears. They don't have Wi-Fi, so I couldn't look up a lot of the books. There were like 2 shelves of Andre Norton books. It was insane. I had to go off what was in the books, you know, the lists of like previous written books and stuff like that. Some of them don't have it, especially these older paperbacks. I didn't realize that this is like smack dab in the middle of a series, but the way the synopsis reads, it should be fine to read on its own. I'm gonna check it out. I'm exploring. So, and then Stargard is one that Whitney specifically recommended, along with a accompanying novella, but this was the only one that I could find on the bookshelf. So, grabbed it. Figure why not? You know. And I love old sci-fi mass market covers. Like, try to get the sun out of the way. This is so cool. Like, that's so freaking cool. And then here is Stargard. Like, and these are sci-fi. I know they look fantasy, but I think Andre Norton was really into exploring the, as far as I could tell in all the books that were there, she was writing both sci-fi and fantasy, but also kind of blending the genres. So I am very excited to get into these two. God, I love the bookstore, but in these books, it's like making my allergies flare up. Like the dust makes my allergies flare up, and I don't know what it is, but ever since I came back from the Alaska cruise, my allergies have been out of control. Probably the season, and I know everybody's doing, they're like, it's fall, let's get cozy, let's get warm, and pumpkins and sweaters. Dude, it's 85 degrees outside today. It has been 85 to 95 degrees since I got home from Alaska. There's no fall in Southern California. It's this until it is 60 degrees through like next April. So I'm just, and then wafting these books in front of my face as all the dust is kicking up. Let's move on to the actual book. The last book that I picked up is The Healer's War by Elizabeth Ann Scarborough. This is another sci-fi classic written by a woman that I had no idea about. Essentially kind of military sci-fi, but from the perspective of a woman who is a nurse. So that is essentially what I know. I don't know much else about it. Didn't really read too much into the synopsis. There's very long on the back, but I am also excited about this. So lots of exciting stuff to dig into. Don't know like what I want to grab first, because like I said, I've been feeling kind of slumpy with my reading, even though I read 4 things. Feeling kind of slumpy, so we're gonna see where the rest of the year takes me, because I did recently a look at my year in reading on Storygraph. They have really cool graphs, and as you can see, the trend of amount of books I've been reading has been going down for the last couple of months. So not that I am upset about the amount of books I'm reading, but it's kind of telling that I'm probably feeling a little burnout, and I just need to figure out what to do about that. And part of that has been doing a couple of rereads of stuff that I've enjoyed, and one of them I'm going to talk about now, but yeah, we'll figure it out. First thing I finished this week, which kind of shocked me a little bit, is Fang Fiction by Kate Stayman-London. My library hold came through very quickly, I think because I put it on hold very early. And this one is complicated, and I think made a little more complicated by the fact that I recently read and adored and loved Long Live Evil by Sarah Rees Brennan, which is somewhere over here in my favorites of the year so far. Now, both of these books are doing kind of the same idea, where someone who is a fangirl of a book property gets sucked into the world of the property itself. In Long Live Evil, the character is dying, and it is more of a true isekai where she is portaled into the world of the book. In Fang Fiction, there's a big book series, very Twilight-esque kind of, and the premise in the book is that there is an island where all of the characters are real, and the author is just writing about these characters that actually exist, and our main character somehow gets sucked into that world. Now, she's kind of portaling to this magic island, but the vampires and other creatures do exist in our world. So Fang Fiction is way more of a traditional, I would say, romance, and calling it Fang Fiction as the like title is very good, because this does feel exactly like fan fiction. And let me say, I am a fan fiction aficionado. I have been reading fanfic and as long as I can remember. When I was 13, me and my besties would literally handwrite NSYNC and Backstreet Boys fan fiction, self-insert fan fiction in our notebooks, and pass them to each other between classes so we could all keep on writing the story. And then, of course, got online, forums, and then live journal, all of that, and then archive of our own. I spent some time on fanfiction.net, a couple of the Harry Potter fanfiction forums. Not a lot of time there, freaking crazy. I was too old by the time Wattpad came along, so I never did that, but that was my progression, and I've been on archive of our own literally since the day it was created. So I consume fanfiction all the time. I know fanfic. I love fanfic. I don't think this trend of making fanfic into published fiction works. And unfortunately, I don't, or haven't really had the time to think of what the issue is here for me, but it just doesn't feel right. It feels weird, because I think there are certain ways that fan fiction is written, certain ways that the creator writes fanfic for an audience, certain ways that fanfic has its own tropes and styles, and a lot of the tropes that you see in marketing today came from fanfic. Like the trope marketing is archive of our own tag marketing. Like it just, that's where it came from. And I know it's bleeding over. I know Allie Hazelwood wrote fanfic, and now here she is. And I know it's becoming a bigger and bigger thing, but to me, there's something about the way fanfic is specifically written for fandom versus the way traditional published fiction is created as a book, as a story as a whole. They're completely separate things. And it felt incredibly weird seeing fanfic type style love happening in a published work. And that aside, that was weird on its own. And I'm trying to sort my thoughts on that, but that's all I've got right now. Now, that didn't affect how I felt about the story itself. The story itself was fine, but it just felt so fanfic-y. It felt so fanfic in how the character is sucked into this world, and oh my god, I'm meeting my idols, and the way she falls in love, because this is also romance, the way she falls in love, almost like it's fucking insta love essentially, with one of the main character, the hero, and how things are not what they seem, and it just all felt so predictable, which is kind of what you want out of fan fiction. Like every so often there's something innovative and something that knocks your socks off, but sometimes the point of fanfic is you want comfortable characters that you love in situations that you know about. That is why we have trope marketing. You want comfort. And that just, it didn't feel comforting here. It just felt kind of like, oh, okay, I know where this is going. Okay, so what? And the story itself, the premise, there was, none of it felt new or fresh or fun. I think this is fresh or fun if you're not really a huge fanfic reader, if you haven't been reading fanfic like voraciously for years. And obviously this will hit different for different people. I'm not saying that my opinion is the be all end all, but that's how I felt about it. It felt so, I don't know, just, so what? Now, all of that said, I devoured this. It was so easy to read. I read it in 2 days. I read it in 2 sessions. It was super easy to read because it was so obvious and just going forward. Oh, and one thing that really bothered me, and I will say this is made pretty clear, and there is a content warning from the author at the beginning of the book. I believe the synopsis does mention it, but the main character is a survivor of date rape. And a lot of what she deals with her own issues struggling with that trauma. That is such a weird juxtaposition against this like rom-com feeling with the rest of the story. You have the main character, like her main emotional goal, like catharsis, climax, is that she begins to break through the fog of her trauma to realize that she can finally start being in a place where she can ask for help. She's been running from it for the last couple of years, and she hasn't seen a therapist, nothing like that. So you have that, and then you have this rom-com part where like her best friend is super bubbly and crazy and falling for like the main hero, his twin sister, who's also a vampire. Then you have the whole like everything going on with all the vampires and how it's very like vampire politics but watered down. It's very Twilight, it's very Vampire Diaries, it's very Buffy. And once Buffy was brought up for the first time in the book itself, I understood that this is Buffy fanfic. This is Spike and Buffy fanfic. And ding, another thing why I realized as a whole this didn't work for me, especially the romance. She's trying to do Spike and Buffy in one book where the characters meet, and I think this book takes place over like a week, maybe 2. You can't do a whole Spike and Buffy with the main character is a bad boy, but he's not really a bad boy. He has a heart of gold, kind of, even though he's been doing evil stuff. But it's not really because he's evil for reasons that you find out. You can't have that kind of arc when they've known each other for a week. I'm sorry, that works in fanfic, but I can't do that in a published romance like this. I just can't. There's just different rules for fanfic. There's different rules for published fiction. There's different rules of fanfic. And maybe the line there is dissolving, you know, as the years go on, and maybe this is me growing up and my age. There's a line. There's a line from published fiction, from fan fiction, and it's got to stay in line, because I feel like once that line dissolves and fan fiction starts becoming a commodity, so mess. I feel like there are probably people who have talked about this at length in much smarter and more well-researched, well-developed ways than I have, but it just instinctually, I'm just like, no, keep them separate. So that's essentially what my thoughts on fan fiction boiled down to, is that it was fun. I didn't like the juxtaposition of the heroine dealing with massive trauma from being raped alongside the rom-com of it all. Didn't like the fan fiction feeling of it all. So I think I gave it 2.5 stars. I wish, I even tried to sit down and like write out my thoughts on this and just kind of like, I just figured I would just go with it and just go with what I was feeling, and that is essentially what I'm feeling. So an interesting read, and I do have to give it that. This book did make me think a lot. It made me try to figure out what I'm feeling about this whole fanfic bleeding into published fiction kind of situation. So I have to give it that, right? Let's move on. The next book I finished is Blood of the Old Kings by Kim Stanley. So amazing cover. Looking that in a little bit. The dragon, one of our main characters here. Just stunning color work. And Tor actually sent me this finished copy, so many thanks to them. Like, I appreciate it so much. I am going to read a little bit from the paperwork that came with the book, because I feel like reading it a little bit off of this is probably better than what I could say in terms of what this book is about. So this is a fantasy translated from Korean, start of a trilogy, and it is a epic fantasy where necromancy, decolonization, and fresh portrayals of classic fantasy elements collide in this first installment of a sweeping epic trilogy. Blood of Kings introduces us to a tyrannical empire powered by the corpses of dead sorcerers and 3 brave individuals forging a new future. The intrepid trio contains a steel-eyed swordsman with the dragon's fang weapon, a spirited sorcerer fleeing a fate worse than death, loved her, and a lion-hearted civilian finding only more questions in his desperate search for answers surrounding a friend's murder. Perfect for fans of the Poppy War and the Bone Shard Daughter. Blood of the Old King spotlights a world of twisted magic, tenacious rebellion, and the courage in seeing the need for a hero and daring to become one. All of that, actually, very good comps, very good synopsis. Yeah, I really liked that copy that I had, so I had to say it because that was really great marketing in terms of that. So now, what I felt about this is that what it did say here. It says fresh portrayals of classic fantasy elements. What I felt about this is that yes, it is translated from Korean and that it has some great interesting stuff like the necromancy, the magic system is essentially, there are people who have magic, and in this world, the Empire, once those people who have magic, the sorcerers, die, their corpses are used as batteries to generate magic for everything else. There are giant like war machines powering the city, street lamps, everything's run by magic. And the batteries for this magic are the corpses of sorcerers that just are there for the rest of eternity. That was pretty freaking cool and wild. I liked that. That was a fresh spin on it. Everything else just felt like retreading classic epic fantasy ground. There's an empire, there's characters from disparate parts of the empire that were colonized. One of them is rising up and creating rebellion after she visits a dragon and gets dragons. The sword is from the fang of the dragon, and she has, powers because of it. And she leads a rebellion. Our sorcerer character is a young teenage girl. She was the most interesting to me, who is ripped away from her home. Like, this empire goes around searching for sorcerers, anyone with magic ability. They rip them from their home, take them to the school in the capital, where essentially they're teaching them to be sorcerers, but really they're just preparing them to live their lives and to be good batteries when they die. So this main character has lived most of her life knowing that her purpose in life is to be a battery when she dies, and she bucks against that. That is interesting. That is new to me. And then the third character, he is just a decent dude who stumbles upon a big political kind of plot situation going on when he's investigating the death of someone he cares about. Now, of those three characters, Lauren is the main character here who's leading the rebellion. Ariane is the teenage sorceress, and Kane is the guy in the city. Lauren's story just felt, there's nothing fresh about it, nothing new about it. Felt a little okay. I enjoyed a lot of the dragon stuff, the dragon magic, where that was going, but in terms of the revolution, rebellion, political stuff, Ariane, loved her story. I'm gonna circle back around to her. Kane bored me. There's nothing fresh or new about him. Bored me, just boring. I didn't care one bit about what was going on with him. Now, Ariane is where the strength of this book is for me, despite it being so samey in terms of what it's doing. It feels like so much other epic fantasy out there. Ariane's story, whole necromancy, the whole her dealing with the idea that her life is laid out for her towards this really horrific end, and then something happens with her and her magic, and I don't want to say anything more than that because it's not mentioned anywhere in the synopsis. That it's a very interesting, very cool exploration of the type of magic in this world. And I really liked it. That story was so strong. I wish the story had been way more about her and focused more about her. Other than that, the writing was perfectly fine. There's nothing exciting about the writing, and I don't think that was a translation issue. By all accounts, Anton Hurt is a fantastic translator, but this writing was serviceable. It was fine. It was just fine. And like I said, only one of the three characters was interesting to me. The other two were mostly boring. And that is unfortunate because it started out strong, but by the time we get to the last, I want to say quarter of the book, where there's big climactic stuff happening, there's a battle, character stories are coming together, I just didn't care as much as I wish I could have. And even Ariane, my favorite character, her storyline just kind of bleeds into the me not caring by the end of this. So This book does end in a place where I am very interested for REN. So if we do get a book 2, Tor has optioned this as a trilogy. So this leaves it in a place where if there are no more books, it's actually a pretty good solitary story. But the last page, the last like 2 pages leaves things open in a way where like it would be really cool to get a, you know, the rest of the trilogy. If it continues to focus on Ariane and what she's going through, because she goes through a lot, and there's a lot of cool stuff that went on with her, that if it focuses on that, I will definitely keep on reading with this series. So I think it's worth a try, and I think because this feels so basic to me, I think this is actually a really, really fantastic beginner intro to a fantasy story. Absolutely fantastic. You could treat it as a standalone. Like I said, it does wrap up, but it leaves, you know, something open for a series. If you don't read fantasy a lot, if you want to give someone a recommendation who they don't read fantasy a lot, this is actually a very good beginner level fantasy. I will say that. So, Blood of the Old Kings by Kim Sung-il. Thank you, Tor, for this. I really appreciate it. I did get an e-arc on NetGalley, but then Tor also asked if I wanted a finished copy, and I said yes. So, beautiful cover. I'm going to be happy to have this on my shelves and have it as a recommendation for people looking for this kind of fantasy. Next was a reread for me, another book that I read in like 2 sittings, and this is Mystic River by Dennis Lehane. This is a reread. I think this is either my second or third time rereading this book. What to say about Mystic River? This is a fucking tragedy of a book. It is hard. I don't know if you've watched the movie. I read this book because I watched the movie starring, I think it was Kevin Bacon, Sean Penn, and Tim Robinson are the 3 main characters in this story. And I read the book after, and the movie is fantastic. The book is fantastic. Oh boy, this is rough. This is a rough book. This is a rough book to experience. This is a rough book to talk about because it is essentially about a tragedy. So the book is about these 3 boys growing up in a neighborhood in Boston, and when they're about 10 or 11 years old, they're playing in the street, and this car rolls up, and these guys pretending to be cops starts, you know, kind of like busting them a little bit. And one of the boys, Dave, goes into the backseat of the car, but the other 2 boys, Jimmy and Sean, they don't trust it, and Dave gets driven away, and Dave is kidnapped by these men. And 4 days later, Dave comes back. This book does deal with child sexual assault and a lot of triggers regarding that. So just take that into account. Now, even though the actual traumatic thing happened to Dave, we do get a lot of like Dave, like everything that went on with him. The nearness of it also affects Jimmy and Sean in their lives. So all 3 of these boys have been affected by this one event in their past. And in the current day of when this book is taking place, Jimmy's daughter, Katie, is murdered. And Sean is a policeman who is put on the case. Now, Jimmy and Sean, they hadn't really, because of the way they went to like school and where they were living, Sean was kind of in the nicer part of town. Jimmy was in the shitty part of town, Dave too. Sean was kind of a little separate from them, and their paths diverged. They weren't really friends anymore. It's kind of like a back in the day kind of thing. Jimmy and Dave are kind of related in that they're both married to cousins. This book is rough. We do everything from Katie's night until she's murdered, and then everything after, and the way things fall like dominoes one after another because of everything going on around them. Like the way Dennis Lehane writes this is fucking masterful. Even though I knew what was going on in the story, I still felt the tension and the suspense and the fucking tragedy of these 3 men and everything going on in their lives, and all the actions that they've taken in the past, all the actions that other people have made around them, all the actions that they take in this book that are all leading them inevitably down to this fucking tragic conclusion. And I think, like, knowing what happens at the end, it's still, I still feel the exact same way I felt when I was watching the movie, when I read the book for the first time. Rereading did not take away that tension for me, and also it kind of made it worse. Not in a bad way, but like it ratcheted things up because I know where it's going, but all the details, like it's been years and years since I read this, so all the details, like Lehane is a master at character work. He's a master at like filling in characters and relationships, and even the world, like this town that they grew up in. A huge theme of this even is like the gentrification of the town around them, and how that kind of like, it kind of affects them as people, as characters, and the ways they think, and it affects how they go about like the story and how they go about living in this world that they're in. Jimmy's grief is insane. It's insanely well done. I really think this is a master. This is a masterwork of character work. It's just so fantastic. Absolutely give it a chance. 5 stars, obviously. If I like, for some reason it was a 4 stars on Goodreads for me, but after this reread, absolute 5 stars. Definitely, absolutely now one of my favorite books of all time. Like, it's always been a book I really liked, and if I would talk about books I really love, like, it would also be on the list, but now officially cemented top 10 favorite book of all time. The movie is also fantastic. I might do a rewatch soon, even though I don't know if I want to cry like that yet. Highly recommended. Highly recommended with some content warning. So, like I said, obviously there is trauma about child sexual abuse, domestic violence, childhood violence, childhood abuse, lots of slurs just because of the types of characters these men are and the type of world they live in. Not lots of slurs, but like one slur is too many slurs, you know, but it's sprinkled throughout, but it's because that's who these men are and that's who these people that they're interacting around are. And there's a lot going on in this book, but like I said, it's just a masterwork in just keep on tightening that tension and just moving along with these characters. You just feel like you're in just unstoppable. Like, it's so good. It's just so good. Last thing I read, and I finished this today, and I thought I was gonna have a good time, but Yona of the Dawn, volume 42. I am emotionally compromised. I am not ready for where I think this is going. As always, I don't know how to talk about this because it is volume 42 of a series. Literally almost everything that I could tell you about this is a spoiler if you're interested in reading this series. I love this series. I love these characters. Sinha, right here, that's my baby. That's my son. Yeah, so all of the big political stuff that has been happening in the last few volumes, there's a battle, all of that is kind of like the dust is settling and we're moving back into more emotional, character-focused stuff. We kind of laser focus on Hawk and Suwon's relationship or lack thereof. Side note, what did Suwon say to Hawk? What did Suwon say to Hawk? What did he say? I need to know. Every time she draws like young Suwon and young Hawk, I want to cry. We laser focus in on Yona and the dragons and Yoon, and everything is emotional and I don't know how to feel. I'm emotionally compromised. I need the next volume. I know there's like 20 chapters already released, but I read it in volumes and I don't know what to do with myself. Like, my sons, I love this story. I love this series so much. Like, I want everybody to read it. I just do. And let me see if I can find some standout art that won't spoil you. Oh, no, that's a huge spoiler on this page. Oh, that's a spoiler too. God damn it, everything is a spoiler. No, I can't show you anything. It's all spoilers. Yeah, I'm just having a little mentee bee about this. Loved it, 5 stars. There's no, like, the series would have to do something incredibly, drastically, catastrophically bad for me to give this anything less than 5 stars for every volume. So, Yona of the Dawn, volume 42, 5 stars. Loved it. I need the next volume soon, and I feel like I'm gonna cry for the next few volumes. So, there's that. I guess really quickly what I'm currently reading, because I am currently reading something and I'm going to stick with it. So I am this far into Ballad of Sword and Wine. This is a danmei, enemies to lovers kind of situation. Is it really enemies to lovers if, you know, your enemy doesn't try to like kick you to death, you know? The TikTok romance girlies need to, need to get on it. All jokes aside, so far this is very dark, but very interesting, intriguing, political kind of enemies to lovers romance going on. They're still enemies. They don't even like, they've barely interacted like twice so far. But there is one part that they interacted and I like nearly lost my mind because the art that followed it was so good. Is it really enemies to lovers if you don't try to kill each other? This is so good. So I think I'm going to focus on this tonight and just like blast through it. I'm really enjoying it so far, as much as you can enjoy something as dark and demented and twisted as this, but it's good. That's everything. This video is going to be long, I can tell. But it's okay because I have some time to edit tonight while I do my laundry. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching, as always. If you would like to leave an emoji, how about wine or sword? Yeah. Thanks for being here. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time. Bye.